Well, welcome to another Bible Truth broadcast. I'm Evangelist Tom Gillum. I'm an itinerant evangelist that believes in expositional preaching. I like to do it line upon line, precept upon precept. I like to do it in a series form. I like to do it with enthusiasm. It's a joy to have you here on the broadcast today. I hope you'll have a Bible handy, a notebook, something to write with. You'll find our text today in the book of Ruth and chapter number 1. We have, for the last two or three broadcasts, been doing a series through the book of Ruth, and we realize that one of the themes of the book of Ruth is redemption. But we have been drawn to the theme of grace, God's unmerited favor, God's riches at Christ's expense, God giving us what we do not deserve. As Paul said, this is the grace of God, that he who was rich for our sakes became poor, that we through his poverty might be made rich. And we have used a little illustration. Maybe you're sitting around with a group sometime, and maybe someone doesn't know you in the group, and maybe they turn to you and say, well, what's your story? Maybe that would have happened to Ruth. I'm sure she would have probably said, this is our theme. All of grace is my story. And we began in Ruth chapter number 1, and we finished up on our last broadcast looking at the reasons for grace. It was the reasons of depravity. It was the reasons of desperation. We saw that so very clearly in the life of Ruth and Naomi. Today, I want to turn our attention again to Ruth chapter number 1 and verse number 6. The Bible says this: Then she, talking about it, Naomi, arose with her daughter-in-laws. She might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab how the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. I want to begin today to look at the revelation of grace. The revelation of grace. I think a lot of times the gospel that is being preached today, as one of the old timers said, it'll make a lot of church members, but it'll make few Christians. And I think it is that we just act like salvation's laying around, and anybody wants to come and get it, just come and get it. I think it is clear that from this text that salvation is a revelation. It must be made clear unto the one who believes it. I am confident it must be revealed. It seems not always to be revealed with the same effectual power as those who truly believe. I want us to see first of all today, there is the revelation of faith. The Bible said in verse number 6 that Naomi had heard in the country of Moab how the Lord had visited his people. She had heard. In order for one to hear, there must be one who is telling. This is an unknown messenger. He is a no-name messenger. He has come from the country of Bethlehem, Judea, from the city, and he has told these three widows that there's bread in Bethlehem. Every generation has had a messenger that would tell the remnant of beggars that there's spiritual bread in Bethlehem. I don't know about you. I won't speak for you. But I want to be one of those unnamed messengers I want to be one of those that will tell spiritual, bankrupt, desperate beggars that God's got bread in Bethlehem in the person of Jesus Christ. I'm interested in this thought. This messenger is going to strike the powder that begins the explosion of the line of David and thus the line of Christ. Oh, this line will be able to say one day, all of grace is my story. But not only do I see there is the ministry of telling, how shall they hear unless someone tell? Oh, let us not be negligent in passing out tracts and giving a word in season that others might know. We are commanded to go to the highways and the byways and say, oh, anyone who is thirsty, let him come. Whosoever will, let him come. But it is God's obligation to reveal himself clearly and effectually. And not only do I see there is a ministry of telling, I see in verse number 6 there is the ministry of hearing. Just because one tells does not settle or close the deal. You'll notice that the Bible said in verse number 6, right in the middle, for she had heard. I'm interested in that little word heard. It means to hear clearly spiritually what one has been told, because he has been given ears to hear and a heart to obey. When Jesus preached, have you ever wondered maybe that the folks there'd been some kind of atomic energy in the water, and many of them had been born without ears. The side of their head was flat, because he often, when he preached, he would end his message by saying, he who hath ears, let him hear. Surely he's not talking about these meaty things on the side of the head, but he is talking about the ears of the heart. Oh, God has given Naomi ears to hear. Not only ears to hear, she has heard clearly what the messenger has said, but also she has been given a heart to obey. Because she said in verse number 6, she said, I have heard how that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. And now in verse number 7, she's headed back to Bethlehem, Judea. Faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. The messenger has come with a word from God. God has given Naomi the ears to hear it and the heart to obey it. Life for her has been made bitter in leaving Bethlehem, Judea. But be thanks unto God. This messenger has brought the message that will change Naomi's life to one of being able to say, all of grace is my story. I wonder today, friend, do you remember the day when God gave you ears to hear, revealed himself to you, and not only did you hear the gospel, but he gave you a heart to obey the gospel and bow the knee to him? See, this thing's not about our decision. This thing's about all of grace is my story. Not only do I see the revelation of faith, but I see the revelation of favor. There is a favor in visiting. The Bible said in verse number 6 that Naomi said, for she had heard how the Lord had visited everybody. Oh, no. The text said he visited his people in giving them bread. This little word visit means to take the oversight or the care or to commit oneself to the necessary needs of another. There has been a famine. There has been a drought. These are signs of spiritual disobedience in the land of Bethlehem, Judea. And here she has heard how God has come and committed himself again to his people. Oh, I think about wouldn't it been wonderful had Naomi and Ahimelech stayed down there in Bethlehem, Judea, as these other folks did, and searched their hearts and to see why God had sent a famine. It's always usually because of a neglect of following hard after him, a neglect of being in the Word of God. Wouldn't it have been wonderful if they'd have stayed down there and searched their own hearts? Maybe they would have missed those gravesides on the hillside. I wonder how much trouble we often run from, only to run into greater trouble. I'm talking about the favor of visiting. But I see also there's the favor of giving. He said that they had visited his people in giving them bread. That little word give means to appoint, to make, or ordain, to deliver or distribute. The little word bread means to turn the face towards with piles of provision. How God has blessed his people. But you know, here's the thing of grace. All of these people that stayed down there in Bethlehem, Judea, they're now enjoying the blessings of the famine being lifted and bread coming. But we're going to see that Ruth and Naomi go down there at the 11th hour and they get the same thing that those did that stayed down there during the test. Oh, my friend, that is being able to say, all of grace is my story. The trials may come when we turn to the Lord and seek after him. His grace is always sufficient. I didn't know if you'd heard or not, but there's bread for beggars down in Bethlehem. All we have to do is mention our need of his provision, and the Father takes care of his people. Well, it's been a joy to have you here on the broadcast again today. Remind you of our study website, tomgillum.com. Have weekly Bible studies there, several hundred archived. Daily devotion page there. We have an audio page. Hook up to these YouTube broadcasts, tomgillum.com. We can ever pray for you in any situation. If you're interested in a meeting, I'm an itinerant evangelist. You can email me at tbgillum@aol.com. Thanks for listening to the broadcast today.